Because this became nationally publicized after Brian Avery's grandfather took the picture and sent it to the newspaper in Pittsburgh, that made national news. And there was no internet, right? So it didn't happen in 5 minutes, but over time, over a week or so, everybody knew about it. And there was a strong movement to end all this segregationist stuff. But the problems they had here in the spring of '45 were a catalyst to further the concept of eliminating segregation in the armed services. So it was important for that reason. The Tuskegee Airmen were here in April of 1945 for the purpose of completing their training to learn to fly the B-52 bomber. And because of prevailing segregationist attitudes then, the white officers were separated from the black officers for purposes of entertainment, namely going into officers' clubs. And so they decided that they would like to go down and use the nicer white officers' club. And besides, in theory, the facilities weren't supposed to be segregated. So they went down there and went up to the officers' club. It was known that they were coming, so the MPs, the military police were there, and the provost marshal, and they were stopped at the door. And the provost marshal suggested they go to the club that was assigned to them, and they said, no, we'd like to use this club. And a little pushing and shoving ensued, and they went inside. And then they got arrested. But they couldn't charge them with violating a segregation order because in theory there was no segregation. So they charged them with accosting a superior officer or something like that, because the provost marshal said that Bill Terry had grabbed him and thrown him aside, and Bill Terry said, nonsense, I just brushed by him. But they got arrested, and then the other 100 or so that were also under house arrest had been arrested because they wouldn't sign an order saying that they couldn't use the White Officers Club. Now, it didn't say that. What it said was that transient people, and they were only here temporarily, they were transients, had a transient officers club, and then the permanent people who were stationed here doing the training, they had a permanent club, and so the transients had to use their club. Well, that was the crappy old club that they assigned the black people to. So anyway, and as you've otherwise learned, this only went on for about a week, and the word got around the country that all these black people had been put on house arrest, and they quickly released them because it was bad press. But they did keep 3 people, Bill Terry and 2 others, and court-martialed them. And Bill Terry was found guilty, the other 2 guys were found not guilty. And Bill Terry alone got kicked out of the Army. Later, much later, like 20 years later, he was exonerated. So anyway, that's a quick story of the mutiny. But after that then, there was just bad feelings on the base, and so they decided to ship them back out again. So once again, they got sent somewhere else, in this case, back down to Fort Knox, down to Godman Field. But that field, they had been there before, that field was inadequate for operating the B-25 bombers. It was really marginal. And they came here because we had big runways and buildings, and we could accommodate the training, but they had racial problems. So that's the story anyway.